Hi, everyone, and welcome to the End of Life Journey and Beyond, the Sands of Time. My name is Lisa Strahs-Lorec, and I am a bereavement support specialist. Hello, Susan. Always great to see you.
Great to see you as well, Lisa. My name is Susan Capurso, End of Life Doula and Legacy Specialist, and I'm so happy to hear about our guest today.
Yes. So, by way of introduction to Dan Schaefer, we will be discussing a very personal but really important topic of talking to children about death. So, before I do a formal introduction to him, I want to say that this personally has affected me my whole life. I lost my biological mother when I was 2. She was hit by a car. And in the 1950s, you never talked about anything with children, especially death. So, at 2, just probably was told that my mother went on vacation. My father, who was only 27 at the time, left in grief, and I was with my aunt and uncle for a period of time. He did come back. I had a nanny for 2 years, and then he remarried. But that event changed the trajectory of my life. My biological grandparents were grieving and unfortunately continued to want to make me not only the granddaughter they had, but also a daughter that they lost. Very difficult time. I lived with that my whole life, and had to figure out how to just become me. So interesting topic and really important topic. And so I'm really grateful to have Dr. Dan Schaefer with us today. Dan has served as a guest faculty member at the College of Physicians and Surgeons, Columbia University, Graduate Schools, New York, Adelphi and Rutgers Universities. He has consulted with both military and police survivors for more than 30 years and has managed a family funeral home that served families for more than 4 generations. The question is today, how do we tell our children about death and by mostly grieving parents? His invaluable past experience and current work as president of Peak Performance Stratgies have contributed to his practical and wise edition of a unique book and talking to children about death. He lives in Roslyn, New York. And I met him at WOW, winning on Wednesday. And Dan, so great to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Sure.
Welcome.
So start with how you ended up with this kind of topic, talking to children about death.
I was sitting in my office and a kid about 7 came in and he said to me, "Why did my uncle die?" I said, "What did your parents tell you?" He said, "They didn't tell me anything."
Hmm.
And so what I look at is what kind of pressure is on parents to communicate effectively with their kids. Why is it critical? Because we find out, among other things, kids can take responsibility for something. It's not their fault. Every time you slam the door, you're going to give me a heart attack. And so, I slammed the door too many times. So you have no idea how a kid is going to take it. My book, How Do We Tell the Children, focuses on a step-by-step guide to helping kids and children and teens cope when somebody dies. But the focus of this is you can't take a book like this and hand it to somebody and say, read the book, because they don't have the energy to read the book. So when we put this book together, in the back are, I don't know if you can see it, there are a bunch of gray pages. That's all that's there. Just the gray pages in the back. And the publisher said to us, you can't scoop the whole book by putting it in a crisis section. And I said, all you can do is give somebody a book. And when I would give them my book, I'd say to them, I don't want you to read the book. Just read the text in the back under the gray pages. And that'll give you all the information you need to communicate with your children. But to have them understand that part of this whole issue is that you're never not communicating. You're communicating emotion, you're communicating feelings, and you have no idea how a kid is going to take the way they're explained and run off with it, make themselves responsible or make somebody else responsible, or tell somebody they're going to be away on a vacation, they're going to be back. So it's really a wild scenario. Basically, this is the people who I have found need this, who haven't, when I was doing presentations outside on this, were, doctors and nurses in hospitals, teachers in classrooms, kids in camps, people who are dealing with children on a regular basis. So it's how do you explain something to somebody? And so if you want, I can go through some of these crisis section pieces and tell you the kind of things that we focused in on.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Okay. So it's to tell people you have to accept that it's not easy. You may be upset, stressed, lack energy, be unable to concentrate, worry about your emotions will affect your child, want to protect your child from pain, or not know how much your child understands about death. I also say in here, be prepared for resistance, because Lisa, you talked about this back when you had your story start. People say, don't talk to kids. They don't know what's going on. Wait till later to tell them, make up a story. Don't say anything. Send them away until the funeral is over. Why do you want to put them through this? So how does a parent respond to that? They say, I could really use your help. I believe that what I'm doing is the right thing for my children and me. You can help me by reinforcing what I'm saying, or say nothing. Don't undermine my efforts. People have to know that, and this is what I talk about, you're always communicating. People should know that children will read emotions around them, read body language, overhear conversations, and ask direct questions or indirectly. Fundamentally, it's impossible not to communicate. So whether they're thinking about it or not, they're always communicating something. They read the emotions of a family. So do you want to take a kid and put them in that environment without the tools to understand what happens? And this goes into, do you take a child to a funeral? How do you prepare them? What do you need to be concerned about? To let them know what's going to happen at a funeral. That you're going to, fundamentally, what does it mean when somebody dies? Is that their body stops working and doesn't work anymore. And so what happens then? So the kid is prepared before they go in. So for example, I'm sure you've been to funerals and you've seen half closed caskets. Kids want to know where the rest of the body is. So frequently we would have to open the casket and show the kids that grandpa is all there, So it's really understanding the mistakes that can be made that last almost a lifetime.
Of course.
If you give them the wrong information. And the people who don't have to deal with the outcome of a kid being misinformed or not communicated with or lied to really are the people who need support. So to me, the easiest thing to do is, this is not a pitch to sell my book, but it is. It's available on Amazon. But when you get the book, just go to the gray pages in the back. Don't even bother reading the whole book.
Dan, I want to stop you because I want to just ask about children's ages. Because people say, oh, well, if it's a really young child, they shouldn't be exposed to this and that. Don't take them to a funeral. So do you talk about different ages and how to handle kids at different ages?
Let me come back in here. I talk about from newborn to age 3. They can sense excitement at home, sadness and anxiety, presence of new people, parents being gone at odd times, and a significant person in their life is missing. And so watch your child to see if he starts acting differently. Among the changes you might notice, stop or altered nursing patterns in infants, crankiness, altered sleep patterns. Age 3 to 6, they'll connect events that don't belong connected. Does that mean someone else is going to die? Grandpa died from a headache. Mommy said she has a headache too. Do I have to be worried? Old people die. Daddy is very old, and daddy may die too.
Yeah.
So, it's how kids from 3 to 6 translate what they're told. You be prepared for indirect questions aimed at finding out if someone else might die. How old are you? How old is daddy? You have to explain the difference between very, very sick and just sick, very, very old and over 20, very old and very sick, and very old and not sick. So, it's how, but it comes back down to the, old people die. Well, if you're in your 20s and you have a niece that's 5 years old, you're very old at 20. And so the question is how do they translate what they hear? So it's putting it in a manner that people will relate to. So, for example, explain about the emotions your child may be feeling or observing. Crying is okay. Excuse me. Crying is okay for everyone. Feeling bad is okay. After a while, you'll feel better. Being mad is okay. People in the family might have trouble sleeping or eating. This is a natural reaction. Then I go into age 6 to 9. Most children in this age group realize that death is final. Some might still think that the dead person will come back. They need more detailed in explanations. It's not like your stomach hurts when mommy gets a cold. They have a greater fear of their parents dying, particularly if they see them as vulnerable, often ill. This concern is even greater when they're being raised by a single parent. So it goes through that.
Yes.
So tell the children what they maybe feel. Age 9 to 12, they're more aware of finality of death, of the impact of death it may have on them, even to the point where it affects family security and economic security. So all of this here information is here. Teenagers, the older your children, the greater the temptation to assume that they can handle it themselves and their problems. Mm-hmm. Don't assume this. You need to help, support, and understand the feelings. Describing how and why death occurs to young children. When a person gets very, very, very old, his body wears out and stops working. Terminal illness because the disease couldn't be stopped. The person got, so the words are all here for somebody to use when they need it. But the question is what's their access to it? The reason I call this a crisis section is I've had people tell me that this book is like a fire extinguisher. You don't want to have a kitchen fire and have to go out to the store to buy a fire extinguisher. Yeah. So, and it deals with death of pets, death of people that they hear. Do I have to be worried? So it's doing everything you possibly can to communicate with a child and reduce the concern that they have and the fears that they may have that you don't even imagine that they would have.
It's true. It's true. You know how many parents, of course, say, well, I don't want to make them upset, or, I don't want them to see them upset. That is absolutely the worst thing to do. The worst.
Yeah. But, when people don't have the resources, it's the only choice. It seems like the best choice. Yeah. There are plenty of people who will agree with them.
That's right.
Because, if you have a question, as you start to look at people who ask significant business questions or real questions, who do they go to? They go to somebody who has no answers.
That's right.
I have one of the things I work with, I said to a financial advisor, I said, what's your biggest challenge? One of your biggest challenges. He said to me, Uncle Louie. I said, who's Uncle Louie? He said, you can win a lottery. You can get a lot of money. But if you want to talk about investments, who do you go to? You go to Uncle Louie. Uncle Louie knows nothing about anything. Says he does, but people always seem to ask the wrong people.
Sure.
So it's basically, this is a resource for people that if they anticipate that they're going to run into a situation that somebody is terminal in the family, that they're going to have to do this, they can set up a plan of what we're going to say.
Yeah. Dan, in your funeral home business, did you have, occurrences like this? Did you experience families, and, children and the relatives and all? Like, what kind of experiences did
Oh,
you?
sure. What I would say to people is what are you going to say to your kids? Oh, do we have to talk to them? Here's a way to do it, right? And I said, I give them the book, and I say, don't read it. So who gives you their book and says, don't read it? Nobody. But I said, don't read my book. Just read the gray pages in the back. You don't have the time, you don't have the energy, you don't have the concentration to read the whole book. So, and I do the same thing with my other book. That book is for competitive edge strategies. I say to people, don't read the book. Go to the table of contents, scroll the table of contents, and let your subconscious mind tell you exactly what you need to read next. And it will.
Mm-hmm.
One of my challenges with athletes, student athletes and professional athletes, is that you get them to trust their subconscious mind.
Yeah, and you both made a point earlier on. It really, the choices that you make now, and that choice can be nonverbal communication and not being open and honest and laying out the truth, really can affect somebody for the rest of their lives. And the adult is bringing their own baggage into the situation. So maybe they had a death when they were younger and it scared them to death, and they just feel that they're protecting a child, by not saying too much. But I don't agree with that concept. I think that the more open and honest communication we have, the better off children will be later on as adults.
I agree with you, but the response you get, easy for you to say, because you're not me, and I don't want to have to face my kids with this. And so it's giving people where the resistance comes up. They'll turn around and say to somebody, what do you think I should do? Most people will say, don't communicate with them. Don't get them upset. And so
Do you think most people would say that?
well, it's just from my experience. My belief is that people almost always ask the wrong people for an opinion.
Right.
What do people say about working with you, Susan?
Yeah.
Why do you want to anticipate your own death and go through stuff? So it's finding out where the resistance is. One of the things that I talk to people about is when people ask me what I do, I tell them I sell mistakes. And they say, who would ever want to buy a mistake? I said, somebody who doesn't want to make one. It's a lot cheaper to buy a mistake and not make it than it is to make the mistake and pay for whatever the fallout is over.
I think you made a good point, Dan, in saying that it depends really on who the adult, the parent in the situation, speaks to, whether it be a friend, a family member, who have you. But you have to think twice about who you talk to. I had an instance that happened in my life this weekend, and I thought to myself, okay, I know what I think about this and what I want to do and what I want to say. And most of my friends would agree with and say, you're right. But is that really the right thing? And I had to think long and hard on who I'd go to ask advice to, who might be smart about that topic. So you really need to be picky and choosy about certain conversations that you have with certain people too. They may not always give the best advice, so they may want to agree with you and say, "Yeah, you're right." Misery loves company.
That's right.
as
There
I
you
said,
go.
That's true. That's true.
right? And you want to hear somebody agree with you and say, yeah, I think you're right, but it may not be the right thing. It may not be the
You
right
always
thing.
have to come back and ask, what's the experience that this person has?
That's right. That's right. And honestly, whether they're going to be really honest with you. They don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't want to make you feel badly. They want, 100 reasons why they may not tell you the truth, or at least the truth of what would really help. So, and they think that the best thing they could do is just say what you want to hear. That's what they think.
But you have to remember that we come to those conclusions and say the things we do to our children because of our own baggage and our own situations
That's right.
that occurred when we were little. So whether it be right or wrong, that's what we know,
Mhm.
so that's probably the best way, but the best way, that's not always the best way.
Yeah.
And you're dealing with people who have never done this before. They have no experience of doing this.
Right.
And so they come in with no experience. And then if they're going to rely on somebody who has something that works. This book happens to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you suggest I think you stopped at about the 9-year-old. What do you
No, he was
suggest
up to
for
teenagers. He was up to teenagers. So, but beyond that,
teenagers, like the 14, 15, 16?
Let me go on. Hold on just a second. It says check page. Oh, older children, the greater temptation to assume they can handle it. Don't assume that they need your help. Check specialty pages 201 to 204. I'll get in back to describing how children occurred. Describe how and why the death occurred to young children. Let me go back to 201 and 204.
Susan, how old were your children when your husband died?
18 and 23?
Okay. Yeah, mine were 19 and 22. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. It's, to ask them what they think happened. What's your opinion? What do you think happened here? Starting out by the fact that the person, to describe the situation as best he can. Person was very, very old, very, very sick. They were in an accident, and the accident made their body stop working. Were they responsible? Either they were or they weren't, you don't know. But it's putting it into a way that they can translate it for themselves so they can hear it for themselves.
Yeah, my children saw it. I mean, they saw him getting sicker and sicker.
Right.
And, it was evident that he was not going to recover.
Okay.
So he had pancreatic cancer, and it was such a debilitating, horrible,
Sure.
painful disease. So, yeah, yeah. And that was 15 months
Wow.
of that. Yeah, yeah.
So, it's taking the best information you have to communicate, find out what people think. If you're talking to teenagers, what do you think happened to you? We know he died, his body stopped working, it's not going to work anymore. But what do you think happened? Did he take care of himself? Did he not? You have to talk about things like homicide, suicide,
Mm,
and fit it in the best way you can.
mm. Yeah.
But just the important thing is that the kid doesn't discover at some point in the future that you lied to him.
So interesting you should say that, because it turns out that my husband was lied to. His family knew, and the older sister knew, and the mother knew that his father had mesothelioma. He was a steel mill worker in Cleveland, Ohio. And he knew that his father was sick, but was never told that he was dying. And he was in high school. And after he died, he resented the family, especially the mother and the older sister, because I guess they thought they were protecting him, but it was their secret. And he resented it the rest of his life.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of stories, when I say to people that, if you take a look at the mistakes that your clients make before they became your clients and what it cost them in money, emotion, and reputation.
Mhm.
The question is, like somebody said to me, I'm driving to California. I said, okay, I have a list of all the radar traps between here and LA. Do you want to buy it now or do you want to wait till you get to LA? No, I want it now. So it's putting us in a position where people make a decision. Is there a resource? Can you get information? Yeah, you can. And I acknowledge the fact that people don't have the energy when they're in the middle of this to read the whole book. They just go to the crisis action.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Dan,
said you talked to children, Dan, earlier. So did you do grief counseling? Did
No,
you?
no,
Okay, so no
no.
therapy in any way.
I help the people who are impacted by not doing it. You talk who need it, who are in a position to really need something to say and didn't know what to say.
Mhm.
So I focused on caregivers. When I was with Columbia University, there were doctors and psychiatrists and people there who deal with a lot of stuff, but not this.
the teachers
Yeah.
too. You think about how it impacts the
Yeah.
students.
Imagine putting a teacher into a classroom with a grieving child. What do they do? What kind of support do you offer them?
Yeah.
And is it and then who does a teacher want to overstep their boundaries talking to a child if the parents have decided not to?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's got to be a better support system out
Yeah.
there for everybody and for all the families, because what I've found is a lot of times, most times, the parent will leave it up to the child whether they want to see somebody or talk to somebody about losing their mom or their dad. And most often, of course, a child will say, no, I'm fine. No, I don't need to do that. I'm fine. And that left, they leave it at that.
you know
They leave it at that.
they say talk to somebody. Well, what am I going to talk about?
Yeah.
And is the therapist that they're sending them to familiar with grief and bereavement?
That's what I mean. There has to be more resources, especially for children. That's
Right.
what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So there needs to be more resources, and parents have to look for them and research them. But unfortunately, like we're talking about, there's not a lot.
Right.
There isn't a lot. And where do you look? And then how do you evaluate who you're talking to?
I would say you would start with the school, right? But then what if the school's not privy and the
No.
school doesn't focus on grief and
Why would we want to deal with that if we're a school?
Right.
Let
Not our
somebody else
responsibility.
let somebody else deal with it.
Right. 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 Interesting.
yeah.
I have to tell you something really interesting because grief can come in many different ways. I was in a preschool and the 3-year-old teacher did not return after the Christmas vacation. So I went into this class with grieving children who lost their teacher and they wanted to know what happened to her. And, she didn't come back, but I did a whole thing. I let them make pictures of her. We did songs about her. We talked about her, and I let them grieve the fact that they lost their teacher.
And
You,
you're
you,
the rare
you,
one
you,
here.
And I was yeah, but,
people
they had to go
are
through that.
Were you even allowed to tell them that she died?
Yeah, well, I was allowed to say that she decided not to return. Okay, that's what the executive director told me. But she said you need to deal with their anger and their grief over the fact that she didn't come back to you.
Well, the executive director instructed you to deceive them.
No,
That's right.
no, she was a social worker. And she told me to be very honest with the children
But
about
do not tell them that she died.
no, because she didn't die. She didn't
Oh,
I thought
die.
you said she
Sorry.
did.
No, she didn't come back. I'm sorry, she left them.
oh,
She
she abandoned
decided
them.
not to come back.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
different.
no,
I
she
thought
didn't
she
die.
died.
No, but
And
the same grief in the fact that she didn't come back to them.
Well,
So I was dealing with that grief.
she
yeah,
abandoned them,
That's right. She abandoned them. That's right. That's right. That's right. And they were grieving over the fact that she didn't come back. Yeah,
and the question from a kid's perspective is, what did we do
that's
to make
right.
them not want to come back to us?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
and that carries on,
Oh, yeah.
especially a
Oh,
school
yeah.
age child, even a young child, that carries on.
Yep.
That feeling of abandonment, and I was left, and you know that
I
from when you
do.
were a young age, Lisa.
I do. I do know that. And by the way, I was always scared that somebody might leave and not return. I went through that for years. In addition to worried about crossing the street and being hit by a car, as she was. Yeah. So, affects your whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why what your book, show the book again, Dan, because we want to say what it is again. So how do we tell the children and step by step helping children? Yep.
Guide to helping children and teens cope when somebody dies.
Excellent. Excellent.
The Department of Psychiatry at Columbia University said this valuable book should have a place in every home. Dan's wisdom comes through page after page, written simply and clearly.
Wow. Great
Not
indeed.
complicated. And this is its fourth edition.
Wow.
I did it with Christine Lyons, who was a writer, a journalist, and she did a lot of the writing. We put everything together, but
And it can still be found on Amazon, you said, right?
yes, it's on Amazon.
Great. Great. Fantastic. Wow.
Do you have sessions or consultations with people if they'd like to speak with you, Dan?
Absolutely.
How can they reach you?
They can reach me at, they can text me at 917-880-6758 and leave a message in the text, and I'll get back to them.
Say the phone number again, Dan. Go ahead.
917-880-6758.
Great. Great.
Thank
That's
you.
the best way to
It's
reach you, right?
such important work, and you have to have a lot of care and empathy for
And the other thing is, it's completely under the radar. Nobody talks about this.
That's true.
Oh yeah.
When I give an athlete or a student a competitive edge, they never give it away. It's interesting about questions. I did a program for Dental Society here on Long Island some years ago. And when I was finished talking about getting a competitive edge, the guy who hired me came up and said, "I'm very disappointed." I said, "Why?" He said, "Nobody asked any questions." I said, "Jack, they compete with each other. They're not going to ask any questions." I did a program for 96 hockey goaltenders. And I said, "Are there any questions?" There were none. And at the end, there were kids lined up that said to me, "Doc, I would never ask a question about somebody who competes against me." So, it's interesting why stuff doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So how many years ago did you write the book originally? Because you said fourth edition. So how many years ago?
Let me tell you when.
Yeah, when it was published.
19. First paperback edition was published in 2012.
Okay. That's not so long ago.
No,
It's only 13 years ago.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And we've come a long way, even since then.
Well, you know what it is? People have to decide what outcome do they want.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I've talked about people, Dan, I have a story that I tell over the years about a teenage daughter who had been getting into a little trouble when her mom got a terminal diagnosis. And they didn't want to bring it to the table. They didn't want to be honest about what was happening in the situation. So the daughter pulled away and started hanging out with the wrong crowd and getting into drugs because she knew something was going on and her mother was probably dying, but not even the father wanted to talk about it and nobody wanted to talk about it. And then I go into the opposite story that had they sat and had some open dialogue and honest communication with the daughter and spent more time with her doing things, helping the mom to come full circle and enjoying and loving one another, that could have changed the course of the whole daughter's life as she grew older.
Sure.
And as adults, we have the power to do that.
But it's risky if you're not sure what to say.
Then you need to find the help and reach out to the right people and the resources.
That's the key, the right people.
That's right. And
Or the
people
right.
don't.
So you guys can lead somebody to the right people. But at the end of the day, who are the right people? And it's to deal with the anxiety of the family to discuss it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
You know, what happens if you discuss it? What happens if you don't?
Right.
You know, one of the things that I do with current clients is I take them out to 2029. Let's visualize 2029 and look backwards from there to today for anything you could possibly do to screw up your 2029 plan. So it's helping people to look at that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I one of the psychiatrists who said to me I should write this book. I was at his home for a dinner party, and somebody said to me, "What do you do?" I said, "I help people to talk to themselves." So he said, "I do just the opposite. I help them not talk to themselves."
By drugging them?
No, just by, I believe that people listen to the way they talk to themselves and constantly distract themselves. You know, I work with teenage athletes, and somebody said to me, "Oh, my son's very smart." I said, "That could be a problem because he could overthink. All he's got to do is relax and rely on his competitive edge strategies."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But psychiatrists are known for giving medications and dulling, the conversations. That's the problem.
Some, yeah, some are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's no question that some people, there is a chemistry thing going on in their body. That's true, you know. But talking and communicating, you said it from the beginning, that's essential for the well-being of all of us.
But it's impossible not to communicate. People think there's a way they can hide what's going on, but they can't.
Yeah.
Because kids will read it and oftentimes come up with the wrong conclusion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's the cost of the wrong conclusion?
I can tell you.
I know you can.
I experienced it.
I know you did.
And I did think that it was because of me.
Yeah.
That she died. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You think you did something wrong. You think you got angry. You think, whatever. Yeah.
Right. So there needs to be more open communication. There needs to be more resources, if you ask me.
Yeah.
And people out there willing to help.
Yeah. Yeah. Important
Well,
conversation, Dan.
All I would have to say if I was talking to people about funeral arrangements is, what are you going to say to your kids? Simple. We don't. What should we say? We're not going to say it. What do we do? Then I just give them the book and say, read the pages in the back.
well, you can find Dan's book on Amazon. We know
That's
that.
right. That's
Yep.
right. Great resource, Dan. Really important.
So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dan.
It was fun.
Of course. It was a pleasure to have you today. Important conversations, and we need to get them out there in the world.
Yep, we did.
Yeah.
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 Thanks a lot, Susan. Thanks a lot, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Dan.
We'll
Really a
talk to you
pleasure having
soon.
you.
Okay,
You're
bye now.
very welcome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay.